Hello, you are in the Saxophone Success Blueprint. My name is LTrain Brantley, and I am glad to be here to discuss the 6 step roadmap that takes you from being a frustrated musician to a more confident musician. We've all experienced situations where we don't feel like we are moving as we would like to, as fast as we would like to get to our target goal. But one of the things that we don't really realize is that it's a process. And in that process, you have to be able to measure record and measure your steps in order to be able to get to that target goal. So that is what we're going to discuss in this masterclass, the steps necessary to make that transformation from where you are to where you're looking to go. So let's do it. All right. So first of all, I just want to give you guys a little bit of an idea of what the agenda will be for this masterclass. Obviously, we're going to start with a welcome, and then of course discuss why most musicians stay stuck. Why aren't they progressing at the rate that they would like to progress? Then we'll get into the meat of it. We will discuss the L-Train Success Blueprint to being a better saxophone player, and then after that we will go into what the actions are, what the steps are, what's your first action, right? We don't want to just sit and watch videos. We want to be able to take action to move our playing and our musicianship to that next level. So that's one of the things that we will discuss. What is the next step? What is the action plan to get there? Then looks like I'm in the way, but then we have the frequently asked questions. Frequently asked questions about how to make this transformation from where we are to being a more confident musician. And then what do we do in order to continue our journey? How do we continue to progress and increase our skill level as a musician? So that is what we're going to be covering in this masterclass. All right. First of all, I would like to welcome you to LTrainJazzStudios. If it's your first time with us, um, in this masterclass or in this school, this community, what we're going to be doing is covering all of the aspects of musicianship, being able to understand what the fundamentals of saxophone playing is, the fundamentals of jazz performance, and also the steps required in order to be able to make the transformation to a more competent musician. This is a quote that I love to reference. And I'm not sure who first created the quote, but great musicians aren't created by practicing more. They're created by practicing the right things in the right order, and that's so true. We get so lost in our practicing that we have no way to really measure growth, and we have no really defined goals or trajectory for our practice sessions, and therefore no defined growth or trajectory for our overall growth. So just to kind of give you a little bit about me, I'm a musician of nearly 40 years. I've been playing saxophone for probably about 39 years now, and playing professionally for over 25 years, probably about 30 years. And I also play flute. Been playing flute seriously for about 10 years. And I also play bass and piano, although I do not advertise myself publicly as playing bass or piano. But I can do things that give me more of a functional relationship with the instruments and of course the music. I enjoy playing music. I do a lot of performance even today. I had the opportunity to play, up and down the East Coast with some great bands and some even more phenomenal musicians, and I had the opportunity to really learn a lot from each of them. And so I continue to perform and play today, but I really have a passion for teaching and sharing what I have learned with others, and so that's why I am pretty much running this community so that I can share what I've learned with other people, so that they can benefit from the path that I have taken with music. So kind of just get into some of the reasons a lot of musicians struggle to make consistent progress. Partly it's because lack of motivation, lack of passion. That is, I think, a real key. You have to be honest with yourself in terms of if this is something that you're really passionate about, right? I mean, if anything that you're passionate about, you will put in the time to make it happen, right? So if you are passionate about model trains, you will put in the time to study model trains. You will make purchases. You'll learn about the different types of model trains, and therefore you will be able to speak intelligently about model trains and be able to uh, hang around people that collect model trains and operate fluently in that environment. Same thing if you are, passionate about gardening. You're going to be able to put yourself in a situation where you are immersed in gardening, and you will hang out with people that also love gardening, and use that to help further your interest in gardening. Music is the same way. In order to be a and grow as a musician, you have to put yourself in situations where you are immersed in it, whether it be, at local jam sessions, whether you're playing in a band, whether you're playing at church, put yourself in situations where you can get immediate feedback and be able to grow as a musician. So obviously lack of passion is one of those things. But then also, we have lack of structure. And that's kind of diving into the next point, the difference between random practice and purposeful practice. One of the primary reasons that a lot of musicians get frustrated is because they don't see the growth, right? They go into practice. Practice is where you grow. Practice and rehearsals are where you grow at, technically and musically as musicians. Also playing with other musicians. Getting out there and performing. That's another way to grow. But your at home or your individual study and practice is very important. So the lack of structure in your practice time is a huge key. Musicians, if they want to get better, you have to be able to measure your progress. Going into the practice room and just playing things that you already know is not growing as a musician. You have to go into a practice session with a goal, with a target in mind. What are you hoping to accomplish in this session? And by doing that, and also, I'm a big advocate of musicians recording themselves, not just at the performance so you can put on social media, but also in your practice time. Record yourself so you can evaluate yourself and kind of give yourself a score as to how you're progressing to get to your target goal. So to take a step back a minute, I suggest if you are going into your practice session, you should do several things. Number one, these are the tools that you should have for every practice session. You should have a metronome in order to be able to measure yourself in time. You should have a tuner, to be able to make sure that you're playing in tune. You should have a way to record yourself, whether it be your mobile phone, whether it be an external video camera, laptop cam, what have you, some way to record yourself so that you can evaluate your performance in your rehearsal time. And then also, I recommend some sort of journal. It could be simple as a piece of paper and pad, note cards. It could be, an application on your laptop or your mobile phone. But you want to be able to record and document your journey in your practice. How well you thought the practice went. Did you feel like you accomplished your goal? Was there something that you felt um, that was giving you a lot of trouble? This is a great way to kind of go back and at the next practice session review how the previous practice session went so that you can make improvements or continue to work on something in the next practice session. That's how you are able to track your progress and grow. And then at the end of the month, I suggest kind of stepping back again, actually creating goals for yourself, not just for each practice session but also for the week. So what are you hoping to accomplish this week, right? What's the goal for this week? What are you hoping to accomplish at the end of the month? What are you hoping to accomplish within 3 months, within 6 months, within a year? Set these goals and be able to hold yourself accountable to them and track your progress to those goals. That is very, very, very important. Becoming a great musician is a process, not just a collection of isolated lessons. There's tons of lessons out there, but are you utilizing these lessons in order to grow as a musician? Right? Are you able to really, document and measure your progress? It is a process. You really have to document what you're doing, uh, implement your practice, and then evaluate and review, and set yourself up for the next practice session. And so this is definitely something that I will harp on as we go through, out the rest of this course, but also in the community. That is very important. Okay, let's dig into why most musicians stay stuck. Well, just like I've explained in the previous session, we as musicians, sometimes we practice without a plan in mind. We practice without going in and really understanding what it is that we want to accomplish. We have no goals, we have no map, we have no purpose in our practice. And that is something that keeps us from getting to where we want to go. In order to know, in order to get to where you're going, you have to know what it is you're trying to accomplish and what it is that you're trying to achieve. And so that is the key piece that I think a lot of us are missing in our practice time. And we're going to cover that even more in this community and in this session. But if we look at another reason why most musicians stay stuck is that we jump from one YouTube video or social media video to another. And it's like the squirrel mentality, where you're kind of just looking at the next thing, kind of what's the next shiny thing, who's playing the hippest licks, who's out there creating the kind of stuff that I want to create and on my instrument, and it sounds good. So you sit there and you watch these videos and you say, oh man, that sounds good, I'm going to practice that one day. And then you jump to the next video and you like that, and then you jump to the next video. All the while, you could have been taking something that you saw and applying it to a practice session. Even if you didn't think you could apply it immediately, you could apply it maybe in a future session. I think it's great to be able to watch videos and to be able to get ideas from videos, but you kind of have to figure out a way to assimilate that in your performance or in your playing. The next thing is, we learn songs without understanding the fundamentals, right? So in order to really learn a song, you really have to break that song down. It's more than just learning the melody or learning the words, right? I mean, you may be able to pull off a performance by just learning the melody or just learning the words. But me as a saxophone player, or let's say I'm a flutist, I need to be able to internalize the fundamental components of the song, right? So not only the melody, not only the lyrics, which as a horn player, I think it would be advantageous if for any song, if there's lyrics, that you learn the lyrics of the song. Uh, Number one, because it helps to reinforce the melody when you are soloing, right? So it helps reinforce the melody if you know the lyrics, because you could sing the lyrics in your head and be able to center your solo around the melody, or even quote some of the melody in your solos or in your improvisation. But I think it's real key to understand and know the lyrics, but also the harmony of the song, the chords, the progressions, the rhythms of the song. What key the song is in. These are all fundamental aspects of a song that, if you learn it, you should prepare yourself to really dig into those individual components, so that when it comes time to perform the song or just play it by yourself, in your own practice time, you can say that you sufficiently know the song in order to be able to perform it or execute it well. Being a horn player, a lot of times we are free from having to worry about the harmony or having to worry about you know rhythm in many cases. Although we can contribute to it by how we play, how we articulate, but it's usually the rhythm section that are responsible for defining the harmony and defining the rhythm of the song. However, there are cases, and I've been in many cases where either the piano player, the drummer, or the bassist, they don't know the rhythm. Maybe they hadn't heard the song. Maybe they didn't have a chance to listen to it, and they're looking at me for input on what's the rhythm, how does the melody go, things like that. And if you know it and you could give that to them, that just that puts you on another level in terms of your musicianship. Also, rhythm section guys, they tend to respect you better because you're not just sitting there waiting to play upon the foundation that they lay. You actually understand, the intricacies of the song at a higher level. I've even been in situations with piano players where they didn't know the progression. So I was able to give them the progression in order to be able to execute the song. So being able to learn the fundamentals of a song I think, is key to actually saying you know the song. And so let's talk about knowing scales, but can't improvise. There's tons of scales out there. A lot of people get really fixated on scales. A lot of scales that sound great to the ear, especially when you get into the harmonic minor scales, the diminished scales, augmented scales. They sound really cool when you play them, but those are just means to an end, right? These are ways for you to be introduced to harmony in a linear fashion, right? Giving you the ability to play over certain uh, chords and chord structures, certain harmony, and play lines and things that fit over that chord harmony. And so, playing a scale can be made to be musical, but there's a whole lot more that goes into true musicality in playing lines, right? Obviously, scales are important, but also intervals. Intervals are important, and of course, scales do have intervals, but what if you vary those intervals up and still play inside of the context of the scale? Also, being able to use phrasing, dynamics, articulation. These are all things that go into the musicality of being able to improvise. Uh, and knowing scales is important, but it's only important to get to the place where you can forget about it, right? So a scale introduces you to certain sounds, and by playing those scales, especially playing those scales over the harmony, over the harmonic context, you are able to hear how those scales sound. And then also, when you're practicing scales, don't just play them straight up and down. Play them, with various rhythms, articulations, dynamics, and really be able to make them musical. Then, as you start to internalize the scales, you will be able to forget the scales essentially and just operate in an oral sense, meaning you understand the context of the linear harmony over the scale, over the chord, and you could execute that because it's in your ear. And so that is key in order to be able to utilize scales. Just practicing scales, in straight time, up and down. That's good, and that's a great way to start. But the ultimate goal is to be able to play those scales and utilize them in a harmonic context. Um, Another, reason I think a lot of musicians get stuck is that they focus on difficult music before mastering the basics. If you are a beginning jazz student and you jump straight to trying to play John Coltrane's Giant Steps, I think that's a great exercise to build dexterity, um, to even introduce yourself to, harmonic concepts. But should that be the place you start? I personally don't think so. I think when you start on difficult stuff, even though some would argue that eventually you would get there, and you kind of challenge yourself, and eventually you will be able to execute on those various things, in a more rapid pace. But the problem is if you start off more difficult, um, in comparison to your current stage of playing, you have the you have the chance of becoming discouraged and not being able to, when you're not being able to execute the particular challenge quick enough. You may think that you're not sufficient enough, or you're incapable of learning the music. So you put yourself in a situation where you could get discouraged quicker, and that's not what we want to do. We want to be able to set milestones that are achievable in our playing, so that we can gauge how we are progressing. Now, eventually, you will get to the point to where you can play, giant steps, and maybe, countdown, and many of Charlie Parker's solos or Cannonball Adderley. But you don't want to start there. It could be very dangerous and detrimental to your progress if you give yourself challenges that take really uh, a long time to accomplish, because you run the risk of uh, really psyching yourself out and thinking that you can't get it, when in actuality you're just not realistically setting appropriate goals for yourself. There's a saying that goes, how do you eat an elephant? And the answer is one bite at a time. You don't take a huge bite, one big gulp of the elephant, because it's too big. You have to start in smaller chunks. And then as you progress, eventually you'll see that you have eaten the elephant, or you have reached a point where you are able to accomplish, difficult challenges, more difficult challenges. So I recommend musicians, they always, always, always start with the basics, and then progress to the more difficult or challenging pieces of music, challenging transcriptions, challenging chord exercises, so that you can gauge along the way your progress and really understand the method that got you there. And again, like I've mentioned before, a lot of musicians stay stuck because they rarely record themselves or evaluate their progress. And I'll keep saying this: in your practice sessions, it is equally important to record yourself, so that you can evaluate your progress later on. If you don't, then you have no way of knowing whether you're accomplishing your goals. I mean, yeah, you can sit there and listen to yourself, and you can say, okay, well, I feel like I have accomplished this goal because I was able to execute the passage. And although that may be true technically, and you may have been able to hear yourself, but the thing about recording yourself, it gives you an objective view of your playing. Think about when you're playing, your saxophone, right? When you're playing your saxophone, you're listening to the music that is coming out of the horn, but the horn is vibrating you, and you're also listening to music in your head. So the way the horn sounds when you're playing it yourself doesn't sound the same when other people are listening to you. That's why a lot of musicians, they say, "Oh, I didn't play that right. It didn't sound good." It's because literally you are in your head. The sound of the instrument is in your head, and you can't discern it from what other people hear. But then when you ask the other person that was listening to you, they'll say, "Oh man, you sounded amazing. It was great." You sounded, and it could go the other way, right? You may think you sound good, and then somebody else, if they're a real friend, and you can accept their criticism, they may say, "Oh, dude, that was kind of awful. You need to go back in the practice room." And do not get, I would encourage you not to get offended. That's a true friend that would be able to tell you the truth. But the point is, how you hear yourself when you're playing is different from what other people hear. So by recording yourself, you get to experience what other people hear when they listen to you play or listen to your music. And that's what you should use to evaluate your progress, right? You want to be able to listen to yourself objectively. Um, Look at things. Are you able to play musically, right? Are you playing the passage musically, or whatever it is you're practicing? Are you using the correct articulation? Are you using the correct breathing, phrasing? Are you using the correct dynamics? These are things that you want to pay attention to as you're evaluating yourself. And I would encourage you to give yourself a score. If you thought you sucked, you know write that down in your journal. Hey, I played this passage. Although I was able to execute it, technically, I sucked at it musically. I do that a lot. I really go in and I criticize myself, right? I'll say stuff like, you gotta watch, you gotta listen. If you're not listening, you're not becoming a great musician. Listen, listen, listen. Even on my sheet music, when I'm playing with an ensemble, let's say a jazz orchestra, a big band, just so that I can make sure that I understand where a key change is. I'll, instead of just circling the key change in the music or whatever, I may put something like, look dummy in pencil, so that I can make sure that I'm looking. And everybody has their own method of talking to yourself. I have my own method. I'm a little hard on myself, but it's cool because I understand myself, and I can take what I can dish out to myself. You may decide to use another method, but the idea, again, the point is to make sure you're able to objectively evaluate yourself and make notes and document, so that at the next session or even the next performance, you are able to rely on that feedback to make adjustments and continuously improve. And remember, progress isn't random, it follows a clear sequence. All right, now we get into the actual L Train success blueprint. Now, there's 6 essential phases to becoming a complete musician. All right, so I want you to come along with on the ride with me. So this is what we're going to discuss. Obviously, building the foundation. We're going to discuss learning the language, developing timing and feel, developing your voice, applying everything you've learned, and of course, continuing to grow. We have to continue to grow as musicians. As even if we've gotten to a point to where we feel like we've accomplished something. So let's go. All right. So let's discuss building the foundation and learning the language. Now, those are two very important topics. Um, as a musician, uh, we want to make sure that we get the basics. A lot of musicians, when they've started music, may have not had the opportunity to get the basics, and that's okay. There are many phenomenal musicians that have gotten uh, very successful music careers not understanding the basics, but many of those basics they kind of learned along the way. I do think it's advantageous to get those basics, or at least the introduction to those basics in the beginning. Sometimes we tend to forget those basics, but as you continue to matriculate through your musical career, whether it be professionally or semi-professionally or hobbyist, uh, you will find yourself going back to those basics as you communicate with other musicians and conversate with them, and and share stories about some of the things that you've learned along the way. So I want to talk about building the foundation to becoming a great musician, and increasing your skill level to get to where you want to go. And so we want to talk about first the proper instrument setup, right? So instrument setup is very important, right? So we want to make sure that our instrument not only is in great playing condition, but we also want to make sure that we understand how to properly handle the instrument. So let's tackle great playing condition. A lot of times we look at our instruments, as the scapegoat, when something goes wrong. I've done it. I've been guilty of it. If I'm playing a passage and something doesn't come out right, the first thing I'll do is I'll look at the horn and like, dude, what's going on, right? So that everybody else will say, oh, oh, so it's not him. It's actually something wrong with his horn. When there's nothing wrong with my horn, there's actually something wrong with me. But there are cases where, in many times, it is the horn. If your horn is not in good shape, then it makes it very difficult in order to be able to execute certain things. And especially like with woodwind instruments, those instruments tend to get out of alignment and mechanism just because there's so many moving parts. There's so many pieces. We got keys, springs, pads. We got all these things that have to be precise in order to be able to have that optimal performance on the instrument. And even with my saxophone, I like to make sure that I get my horn checked out at least every 6 months. Sometimes if there's something that I notice that it needs to be looked at, and I have a suspicion about, I may take it in more frequent, or within that interval of time. But it's important to be able to keep your horn in great shape. And I recommend, if you don't have one, find a good instrument repair person. Find someone who can who's known to be a good has a great reputation of being able to do repairs. And the great way to find that is go talk to guys that are out there playing, especially the ones that are professionals. Say, hey, I love your playing, I love your horn. Where do you take your horn to get repaired? And they could probably give you, one or two guys that they may use, or ladies that they may use to fix their horns. I've had several over the years. I have one now. He actually turned out to be a great friend of mine now. He's a phenomenal saxophone player, but he is in the horn repair business, and he's super good, and very reasonably priced. And so I use him, the majority of time for any adjustments to my horn. But another thing is, as important as that is, it's also equally important in how you handle the instrument. You need to make sure that the instrument is handled with care. Always, when you're putting the instrument together, handle it with care. Specifically for a saxophone, how you grab the instrument and, let's say, put your neck on the instrument. You typically, most people say to grab it by the bell, and then grab the body of the meat of the neck, and gently force it, it's force, but gently um, maneuver it on the instrument until it's locked. Also with the saxophone, especially the neck, also make sure the neck is not hard, it's not resistant to go on, because if you're having to use too much force to put the neck on the instrument, then it could lead to potential damage, because you may end up damaging something as you're trying to move it, and you don't want to have exercise too much effort when you're putting the horn together. Same thing with the mouthpiece, right? You want to make sure that putting the mouthpiece on the neck is relatively smooth. So what does that mean? That means always make sure you have cork grease, enough cork grease on your cork of the neck, so that when you place the mouthpiece on the neck and position it into the position that is most likely to be in tune, you're not struggling too much. Again, because you don't want to apply too much force to damage the neck or damage the mouthpiece while you're putting the horn together. And also with that, it is recommended to always have the neck off of the horn before you put the mouthpiece on. Or if you do put it on with the neck on the body of the horn, make sure you handle it in such a way where you're grabbing the bottom body of the neck as well as the top body of the horn, and secure it, so when you put your mouthpiece on, you're not damaging or damaging the instrument, right? But I recommend putting the mouthpiece on the neck before putting it on the body of the horn, so that you want to make sure that you don't contribute to the wear and tear of the instrument more than the usual use of the instrument. Another thing is uh, how you put the horn in your case, or keeping your horn uh, in the case, how it's placed in the case, making sure that you always have your horn plug at the top end. That helps to protect your register key, keeps that from being bent inside the case, and also helps to keep the horn snug. And make sure that the case that you have for your instrument is the right case, right? Like, there are all kinds of aftermarket cases, but you want to make sure that your saxophone or your flute or your clarinet, you want to make sure that that is snug inside the case, so that as you move around with the case, or as it gets moved around, heaven forbid at the airport and somebody throws it, in the cargo hold, you want to make sure that the the amount of movement or play within that case is minimized, right? Um, and so if you have a case where that's the case, then what you could do is, maybe take some extra foam or cushion if you have, and place at the beginning or the top to keep and minimize that movement. Or what I've seen some guys do, and I've done myself, maybe you can place a towel, a soft towel or something in the case, again, to help give that extra support so it's not moving around inside the case. Also, when you look at your reeds, there are some people that play cane reeds or wood reeds. I have transitioned from reeds about 15 about 15 years ago. And so I play mostly plastic reeds now. I play Legier reeds. I mean, there are other vendors out there that offer different types of plastic reeds, but I play Legier reeds now, and I really like them. I've gotten used to them. I tried to go back to cane reeds, and I can't. The maintenance for plastic reeds is a little less, even though I do at this point still take very good care of my plastic reeds. Unlike the cane reeds, I don't have to moisten them like you typically need to do with your cane reeds. But I still do keep them in a reed case, right, so that they can avoid warping. They don't warp as much as cane reeds do, but I still keep them in the case so that they last longer. They are a lot more expensive. I mean, you'll pay more for one plastic reed than you will for a box of cane reeds, and that's just the way it is. They're engineered to last longer. I mean, I could play one reed even at the frequency that I play. I can play one reed for probably 6 months, um, and 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 before I have to change to a new reed. And so, if you're playing cane reeds, you want to always make sure that you keep your reeds in a reed case. Also, make sure you're moistening the reeds when you pull them out of the case, so that you can set it up and align all the fibers in such a way, so that it's ready to vibrate when it's placed on the mouthpiece, and therefore you'd have less, warming up, blowing, in order to get the reed ready, right? So that's another thing that you always want to make sure that you do when you're, properly handling the instrument. And then another thing is, be careful. Make sure you have a good stand for your instrument. A good stand, meaning a stand that is sturdy, a stand that is stable. I've seen many situations where people have placed their uh, instruments on the stand, and a strong wind comes and knocks it over, right? Um, and that is very important. I use a particular brand. I'm not an endorser for the brand, and I know there are other stable stands out there, but I use a particular brand called Hercules. I've been happy. I used it for. I have single instrument stands from them, as well as multi instrument stands, and I found them to be very stable. They work well. I've had instances where my horn has fallen off. Um, you know, in one of the cases that has happened is my fault. is, let's say in the days when I had wireless mic systems, and I would have a piece of it, let's say maybe the transmitter clipped to my belt or in my pocket, and I would have the mic actually on the horn, and I would put the horn down and forget that I have the transmitter inside my pocket, and I would walk away and literally yank the horn off of the stand. Now, that's not the stand's fault, that's my fault because, I was a little absent-minded. However, uh, being able to make sure that you have a good stand that can help avoid falls or accidental hits of the instrument, light brushes, I think is real key to keeping your horn in great shape. So proper instrument setup, being able to make sure you have a good repair person, being able to make sure that you're handling the instrument well, being able to make sure you have a great stand, make sure you're transporting the instrument well inside of its case. Those are all important uh, things to consider when you're talking about your instrument setup. Now, when you get into other things like, what type of reed should I use? What type of horn should I buy? There's all different types of variables, and all I can say with that is to really really study, what it is that you're trying to accomplish. I do a entire course on the mouthpiece and how the mouthpiece works, the different parts of the mouthpiece, and those things really help to guide you to that different sound that you want. Otherwise, it's kind of just like trial and error. And if you bought any or purchased any mouthpieces, these things are not cheap, especially the good ones. They can range, anywhere from, $200 on up to $1,000 for good mouthpieces. And so, but a lot of people buy them, maybe just because one person is playing the instrument and they don't get the sound that they want. But it's important to really understand the makings and setup and configuration of the mouthpiece in order to get to the goal that you want. Also, and of course, the horn it plays a big part. The usually the cheaper or the least expensive the horn, the lesser the construction quality. So it could be more apt to damage or defect. If it's a cheaper horn, typically the more expensive horns are built at a higher standard, higher quality metal, higher assembly factors that make the horn more durable. And so these are obviously things to consider when you're looking at investing in another instrument. Now, you could start off with a lesser instrument or less expensive instrument, but you just know you will probably run the risk of defect or failure in a shorter term than with a more expensive instrument. So it's just something to keep in mind. And that was a lot, obviously, about proper setup. But then, let's talk about a foundation of breathing. Breathing is very important. It's very important to be able to understand how sound is produced in the instrument, and obviously utilizing your lungs, but also your diaphragm, right? Being able to understand how the diaphragm interacts with your lungs in order for proper breath. Breathing comes into play when you're actually playing certain phrases. Sometimes phrases are very long, and you want to make sure that your breathing is to the point to where you can endure through the phrase, right? And a lot of times it takes practice to be able to condition your diaphragm and your lung capacity to be able to play long phrases. But also it adds to the musicality, right? So if you're in a position where you know you don't have a lot of capacity to play, the music may sound choppy if you're taking breaths in a musical phrase at the wrong place, right? At a place maybe where the composer hadn't attended. And so you have to think about those things when you're performing. Now, if you can't do it and you have to perform something, you really have to learn how to compensate, right? You may, and it's always been people have been told not to do this, but you may have to lessen the effect by, maybe breathing into your nose to have the air ready so that, if you have to take a breath, it could be quick enough to where the break is minimized in the music and you can keep going. And typically when you're playing with an ensemble, anywhere, if you have multiple instruments that are playing, it may be less noticeable if you have to take a breath than if you were playing by yourself and you're taking a breath in a less optimal place. But being able to practice breathing, using your diaphragm, making sure you have the correct posture is very important to support breathing in your playing. Now let's talk about embouchure. Embouchure is such a subjective thing, but typically in your embouchure, you want to watch out for things that I think a lot of beginners make. Making sure that you have, number one, enough mouthpiece inside of your mouth to support the vibration, the production of sound, the vibration of the reed, but not have too much uh, in your mouth to where the sound is more spread, right? The reed needs to have enough in it to allow it to freely blow, but then also uh, have enough support around the blowing part of the reed so that it's not just kind of blowing and vibrating, you know, uh, erratically. It needs to have that support from your mouth, that firm support. And obviously, the mechanics that you've been taught, rolling your bottom lip over your bottom teeth, right? And then positioning your teeth on top of the mouthpiece at the bite location here is is very important to be able to support that sound. So be conscious about how much mouthpiece you have in your mouth in order to be able to support the sound. And you may have to experiment with it, right? And, if you're confused as to how much mouthpiece you should be putting in your mouth, then you should experiment, right? Some beginners, they may start with too much mouthpiece and they get the honking sound, honk honk, and that's not very musical. And then some musicians, they'll start with too little mouthpiece in their mouth and they found that their sound is restricted, right? It's thin and restricted because the reed is not able to be blown freely and vibrate freely. And so it's something that you can play around with it to see what position in your embouchure gives you the best sound. And also make sure that there are no leaks. A lot of this is also to really conditioning your lips, the muscles in your lips, to be able to support and keep that air from leaking out of the sides of your mouth and around the different corners of your mouth, so that all the air can be concentrated to go into the horn, right? And so that is something that you want to make sure that you take special care of as well as you're playing. Hand position. Hand position is very important. Obviously, there's resting hand positions. As we're playing the saxophone or even the flute or clarinet, we want to make special care to ensure that we're using correct hand position. But also, a lot of times, saxophone players, when we're playing, we tend to, or woodwind players in general, we tend to, kind of let our fingers, go all wild, right? Where we have our fingers positioned in the right place, but as we're playing, we're kind of doing this, which is it doesn't look that great too, but being able to practice having your fingers close to the keys not only looks better, it also sets you up for better execution on the instrument, more speed. If you're having to come all the way from out here to bring your fingers back onto the keys, then that could be hindrance to your performance when you're getting to playing a little bit faster. You're not going to be able to execute things as quickly or as accurately as you like to. And so I didn't mention it before, but that's another reason, another thing that I think that is important outside of having a tuner, having a metronome, having a recorder, having something to document your progress. I also recommend having a mirror, or of course, obviously, if you're recording yourself, you'll have the ability to evaluate your physical playing, not just your sound, but that you have to wait till after you're done practicing and view the video. But if you want immediate feedback while you're playing, I suggest either using your front-facing camera on your phone or iPad when you're recording yourself, so you can get that immediate feedback on how you look when you're playing. Or something I do is I actually have a mirror in my practice room, and so I will go sometimes in front of the mirror and I would just watch myself playing something and I'll see how I look. If I look ridiculous, then I'll try to change it. If I look cool, I'll try to make sure I continue that action or pose or whatever I'm doing. But I always want to make sure that I'm aware of how I look when I'm playing, so that I'm setting myself up for optimal execution on the instrument. Uh, I'm a big fan of Jackie McLean, who's one of the jazz musicians that came up, in the heyday of the bebop era, and he does this thing when he's playing where he has one shoulder that's lifted up and he's playing the sax, and man, I just love that. And so sometimes I find myself doing that because I'm trying to be like Jackie McLean. I love Jackie McLean; he's one of my favorite guys. But whatever works for you, in what you do, I think that's fine. But also just understand how you look when you're performing, so that you can make any adjustments if need be. Tone production, we kind of talked a little bit about that when we were discussing, you know, embouchure and of course breathing, which all goes into tone production. But specifically on woodwind instruments, when you're looking at tone production, we're looking at multiple things, right? We're looking at our embouchure, making sure we have the right embouchure. Um, you know, Also making sure that we have proper breath support. Also making sure we have the right equipment, right? Again, like I mentioned before, the actual mouthpiece that you use contributes greatly to the type of tone you're going to get. Whether you're going to get a real, edgy, smooth jazz type of funk type of tone, or whether you're going to get a more mellow, kind of straight ahead ballad type of tone. The mouthpiece contributes heavily. The horn certainly contributes, but then also we have internal mechanisms. So when we look at breathing and embouchure, these are mechanisms within our body that we're using to produce sound. So breathing, obviously, with your diaphragm and your lungs, embouchure with your mouth, but we also have muscles in our throat, right, and vocal cords that could influence the sound. And when we're looking at building that technique of generating good tone quality out of our instrument, there are certain things for woodwind players that can be done to increase the value of our tone production. One of those exercises, very boring exercise, very boring. I'm sure you already know what it is, but it's so key to being able to generate a solid tone out of the instrument. And that is long tones. Oh my God. I hate long tones. They're boring. They don't get me, they're not great in getting on stage and playing, and nobody's going to yell and scream if I'm playing long tones. Long tones are very boring, yes. However, they are highly effective at generating tone. Uh, I suggest, and I've done this before, is in practice sessions, practicing, let's say if you have 30 minutes, practice all 30 minutes just on long tones. That's it. Nothing more. Just practice long tones. Maybe play through, your B flat scale, one octave, going up, going down, holding the note for as long as you can while in tune, right? And also maybe even with a metronome, but definitely with a tuner. So one exercise you could do, you can actually, let's say, finger your low B flat, play it, hold it for as long as you can, but also maintain tune. A lot of times when we're holding notes and we run out of breath at the end, towards the end, we tend to get softer, which is fine, but we also tend to go out of tune. We may tend to get flat, or in some cases, some individuals, they bite and get sharp. But we often tend to get flat. But the key is to, when you play your long tones, play the long tone and stay in tune. And having your tuner on and having that tuner uh, registering you and you watching it will help make sure that you are in tune when you are playing and when you are performing your long tones. By the end, I wouldn't say, you may notice some difference by the end of that practice session, but I guarantee you by the end of the week, you're going to notice a difference. Definitely by the end of the month, you're going to notice a difference in your playing. So realistically, if you have a limited amount of time to practice, I would say if you can just dedicate 10 minutes to practicing long tones. I don't care what stage of musician you are. You could be an advanced player. Long tones is always going to be a part of your practice routine, I believe. Because generating a tone is something that we need to be always conscious of. Also, as we get older, our bodies change, so we want to make sure that we stay in shape. With our throat, our lungs, and make sure that we constantly uh, evaluate ourselves to make sure we're producing the best tone for our instruments. And of course, we discuss practice habits. Practice habits are an essential part of the foundation for becoming a great musician, because we have to understand that practice is where we actually grow. Practice is where we put in the work to become a great musician. So we have to organize our practice sessions so that they give us the maximum benefit, towards our goal. And just to recap, many of the things that I've said before in terms of what is critical in being able to have a great or successful practice session is, number one, always go into your practice session with a goal in mind. What are you hoping to accomplish? You don't have to practice everything, in the world, but what are you hoping to accomplish out of this practice session? Is it to be able to play, certain scales by memory? Is it being able to play a certain song by memory? Is it being able to play a certain passage in a piece of music, with no issues or no errors? The Having a goal will help you to be able to stay focused in your practice session. Also, go into the practice session with the right equipment, right? Go into the practice session with your tuner. Go into practice session with your metronome. Go into practice session, with your recorder, whether it be your phone or a separate camera. And also, like I mentioned, make sure you have some way to view yourself, right? I have a mirror in my practice room that I use to just kind of observe myself while I'm playing, to make sure I am playing, with the optimal um, performance posture on my instrument, and that is really key. And evaluate yourself, after the practice session. Evaluate yourself how you did, and set goals. Right, like I mentioned, set goals for yourself. Long term. You can do short term, but then long term. Where do you hope to be in a month? Where do you hope to be in 3 months, 6 months, a year? And constantly evaluate yourself in order to have uh, true understanding of how effective your practice is. And so, being able to develop the physical skills needed to play comfortably and consistently are key. These are all aspects of building the foundation. Proper instrument setup, your breathing technique, your embouchure, your hand positions, your tone production, and your practice habits are all key parts of building that foundation. So now we're going to move into actually learning the language of music. All right, now let's discuss learning the language, right? So, music is made up of many things, right? So, we have scales, we have chords, we have harmony, progressions, being able to play orally, understanding the theory as well as vocabulary, right? And so, let's discuss the different elements of the language. Scales are not necessarily the goal when it comes to being able to play music. I always tell people scales are more of a training mechanism, a means to an end. a way for us to build certain aspects of our playing, and also build certain understanding of linear playing, over harmony and chord progressions. So understanding scales, I think, is critical, right? Being able to execute scales, understanding scales, but keep in mind, you're not necessarily going to go on an event and play scales. The ultimate goal is to be able to play music. Now, I can see, somebody doing something where a scale passage or playing a scale could be interpreted as musical, and that's fine. But typically, scales aren't the end all be all to playing music. They're a way for us to build a proper uh, foundation for executing music. So when we look at various scales, like say specifically major scales. Now there's other types of scales, right? You have five qualities of harmony. You have major, you have minor, diminished, augmented, and dominant, right? So those five qualities of harmony. If we look at major scales, we can find various scales within various types of scales within that one major scale, right? You have, minor scales, you have dominant scales, and of course we have major scales. These are ways to kind of introduce our ears to, the harmony in a linear fashion, but also give us something to work with. When I talk to students about major scales, I think I tell them it's very important to know your 12 major scales, right? Or major scales in all keys. But not only that, understanding the modes of the major scale, right? So you may hear people talk about the diatonic modes from a classical sense, right? So you have the Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, and Locrian. Those are the seven diatonic modes of the major scale. And so I encourage students to not only understand the major scale, but understand the diatonic um, scale within the major scale, right? So, and what I mean by diatonic is each note within the major scale. So let's take C major, for instance. So you have C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, right? Uh, so if you're looking at C, C would be considered the Ionian mode. It's the first degree diatonically of the major scale. D would be the Dorian mode, right? And it's just a coincidence that D in Dorian is the same as the note. So don't get hung up on that. But the second diatonic mode of a major scale is called Dorian. And in this case, it happens to be D. And that's just playing from D to D using the key of C, right? So you would play D, no flats, no sharps, from D all the way to D, and that is the Dorian mode, which happens to be minor, right? Then the next mode is Phrygian. The third diatonic mode of the major scale is Phrygian, and it's spelled with a PH, Phrygian, and that is also a minor mode, and it's playing, E, which is the third mode, E, the third note of the major scale, from E to E in the key of C, no flats, no sharps, uh, and that's also, again, like I mentioned, it's a minor. Then you keep going up to F. F is major. Now it's a major with a raised fourth note. So if you look at F playing from F to F, uh, it differs from the F major scale because in the F major scale, the fourth note is B flat. But if we play F as the fourth mode of the C major scale, it has a raised fourth, which is B natural. So we play from F up to F in the key of C, and that gives us the Lydian mode. And then, of course, when we get to G, G is G playing from G to G in the key of C gives us a flat seventh. So if you look at the G major scale, G major has one sharp, and that's F sharp. But if we look at it in the context of the diatonic mode, so in G, playing from G to G in the key of C, the F sharp becomes natural because remember, C has no flats, no sharp. So we play from G to up to G with that F natural, and therefore we have a dominant because the definition of dominant means that the seventh note is flattened. So that becomes the dominant seventh chord inside of the major scale. And then the next would be uh, the Aeolian, right? So, I'm going back to the dominant, the mode name, the classical mode name for dominant is Mixolydian. Okay, so now going to the next, which is Aeolian. Aeolian is the classical name for minor, and in this case, this is natural minor because it has a flat third, a flat six, and a flat seven. So we are playing the starting on A, we're going to flat the third. So if we compare this to the A major scale, in the A major, the third is C sharp, but we're going to flat the third so it becomes C. Also in A major, the sixth note is F sharp, but we're going to flat that and that becomes F natural. And then of course the seventh note is G sharp in A major. We're going to flat that and that becomes the G natural. So this makes it a natural minor scale. And so we play from A up to A in the key of C, meaning no flats, no sharps. That gives us a natural minor. And then finally B, which is the next mode, that is the Locrian mode. A lot of people refer to it as half diminished. That gives us the kind of Locrian sound. And that one gives us or introduces kind of the flat five. So in the key of B, right? So we are looking at the key of B. If we look at B major scale, we have a sharp three, we have a sharp five, we have a sharp six and seven. So if we look at the B major scale in context of C, we're going to play up from B up to B in the key of C. We're going to have a flat three. So that's going to take our D sharp to D natural. We're going to have a flat five. So that's going to take our F sharp in B major to F natural. Then we're going to have a flat six, right? So that's going to take our G sharp to G natural. We're going to have a flat seven. So that's going to take our A sharp to A natural. And then we're back up to B. So if we play from B to B in the key of C, that gives us our Locrian sound. So it's basically like our natural minor with a flat five, essentially, right? So we're flatting the five, and then we have that Locrian sound. And so I know that sounds, might sound a little challenging, but the idea is not really to get hung up on like the names and all of this. That it really is to understand that there are multiple scales or multiple modes that can be derived from the major scale. That's the thing, right? So if you play a C major scale and play from C to C, that's the major scale. But if you keep the C key of C, which no flats and no sharps, but you just start on D instead of C and play from D to D, that gives you a different scale. That is the Dorian scale, right? You're playing basically the D scale with a flat three and a flat seven, right? So you're playing instead of F sharp, you're playing F natural. Instead of C sharp, you're playing C natural. So you're playing from from D to D in the key of C. And so understanding this makeup of different diatonic modes in the major scale helps you to be able to get introduced to some of the linear harmony and also get your mindset to understand progressions and additional harmonic concepts. And so that brings us also to chords, right? So chords are basically groups of notes played together to perform or to make up a particular harmonic, sound. If we go back to the major scales, we have seven chords. So a chord is one or more notes, played together. So if we have two notes that are played together, let's say C and E, so that's two notes that are major third apart, right? C and E. So if you play C and E together on the piano, it's going to create a chord. That's a two-note chord. If you play C, E, and G, that's going to give you a three-note chord. That's a three-note triad chord, and that happens to be a C major triad chord. If you play C, E, G, and B, that gives you a seventh chord because we're adding the seventh note, which is B. So that's going to be a C major seventh chord. And so chords can be made up of different, different numbers, different intervals, but it's essential to be able to understand and study chords. In this course, I will do a breakdown of chords and give you practical ways of being able to understand chords, but it is also very evident, or that's not what I'm looking for, the word I'm looking for, but it's very critical that you understand that it is you have to study, right? Study, people don't want to think. They just want to get it or by osmosis. But you have to study to be able to understand, this harmony and experience. It's a part of the language, right? Chords contribute to progressions and harmony. And so understanding chords and chord types will allow you to be able to understand music on a more fundamental level. And that leads us to harmony. Different chord types gives us different sounds. Like I mentioned before, there are five types of harmony. You have major harmony, you have minor harmony, you have dominant harmony, you have diminished harmony, and you have augmented harmony. And so these are qualities of harmony that you need to understand that make up a lot of the music that we play. And so being able to dig in, decipher those harmonic concepts, understand how they work and what to play on them is real critical and key. And I have fundamental uh, courses that teach you how to understand and interpret harmony and take you kind of step by step to really understanding harmony from at a deeper level. And of course, ear training. Music at the end of the day is all about ears, right? What you hear. A lot of the stuff that we learn that seems technical, that seems like it's rocket science, it's a means to an end, right? So you learn, this stuff, this hard stuff, but a lot of people say, you know, once you get to a certain point, you throw all that stuff away and you just play with your ears because understanding a lot of the theory, understanding, progressions, chords, that helps to train your ear to the point where you don't need to rely on it much. Not to say that you really throw it away, but you don't rely on it much. And takes us down to theory and eventually vocabulary. So theory is again learning the theoretical concepts, the fundamentals behind the music, so you know how to operate. Uh, One thing for me is as a saxophone player, as a theoretical concept, I understand that my alto saxophone is a minor third down from concert. So if the band or if a song is in the key of C concert, I know that I'm going to be playing in my key on alto of A because it's a minor third down. So I'll be in the key of A for that song or that performance. And being able to communicate and communicate effectively with the band, that helps, right? Understanding those theoretical concepts. Um, and that kind of leads me into vocabulary, right? So I've mentioned in several occasions that music is a language, and it's a language that is it can be very complex, but once you learn it, it becomes fluid. And just like I mentioned the example where I'm talking to other musicians from a musical standpoint, I will be able to, if I understand theory, be able to communicate more effectively. And I gave an example earlier of when, let's say, I'm in a band where, maybe the piano player, bass player may not be as prepared and they need guidance. I can speak to them in such a way that they would be able to perform. If they understand theory, they would be able to perform the music uh, just based on my instruction, and we could get through an event or get through a gig without a lot of rehearsal or practice. So understanding theory, everybody understanding the musical vocabulary really helps in being able to perform with other people, being able to interact with other people. Also, just from your own study, just kind of knowing uh, where to concentrate. What if there's issues or things that you need to improve upon? Is it because of something you're doing physically, or is it maybe your lack of understanding of particular element of the music? The harmony, progressions, chords, and things of that sort. So the outcome essentially, you want to be able to understand how music works instead of being able to memorize notes. Understand the fundamentals and the foundation of the music to the point that you can be able to execute effectively and efficiently, um, no matter what you're doing, whether you're playing with a live band or a solo piece, concert piece, or what have you. Understanding the language of the music is critical to being able to communicate more effectively. All right, guys, in step number 4, we're going to talk about developing time and feel. And this is one of those musical aspects that really helps to uh, you know give you that character in your playing. Also, it's a indicator of how disciplined you are as a player, because if you have good timing and good feel, uh, it shows that you know that you have immersed yourself in the music and you really have a good sense of time as it relates to the music. Also, the fact that you're playing is very very even. It's not sloppy, right? So you always want to be someone when you're exercising or executing, any passages on your instrument. You want it to be precise, you want it to be skillful, and a lot of that has to do with your timing and your feel. As you're performing, playing, with a band or playing against a track or even just playing with the metronome, all of your execution should be clean, right? So you should always um, use as a goal to make sure that your execution is clean. And uh, one of the ways to do that is what I always harp on is playing with a metronome when you're practicing, because that helps you to develop feel as well as timing. And so, in the course, you learn, playing with a steady time, right? So playing with a steady time, it comes from, playing with some sort of reference that keeps steady time. Again, whether you're playing with a backing track or whether you're playing with a metronome, concentrating on having that pulse in your mind or as a part of your practice routine in your head, so that when you're performing and you're playing, you're always playing with that in mind. It's like a internal pulse or a groove, somebody may say, depending on the type of music you're playing. And if you have that pulse or that groove in your mind, at all times, that will help you to maintain that rhythm, right? Some people, they may do something like tapping their feet. They may, bob their head, but whatever it takes to be able to maintain that internal pulse or that internal rhythm is essential to being able to develop as well as keep good time and maintain feel. Also, swing feel and subdivision. This course is about jazz, so swing is a very important concept in jazz. But you also have others like Latin, bossa nova, waltz, salsa. I mean, these are all various styles of jazz, and so being able to execute good time and have that pulse of, let's say, where the one is, or in swing where the two and the four is very important. In developing that feel and that timing. Also, being able to subdivide. So, unless you have good time, it may be difficult to execute, subdivision, rhythmic. Uh, you know ideas, right? So if you have a steady rhythm, you can execute those ideas more flawlessly instead of sloppily, right? It could be in time, and as those ideas of subdivision, as they really start to come out in your playing, they may be able to get people to think of other things in terms of other styles of music. Like, you can do a Latin subdivided rhythm over a swing feel, and people will be able to pick up on that. But unless you have good timing, you won't be able to execute that. So it's timing, as well as placement, right? Placement in within the timing or the feel or the rhythm of the song is very important as well, in order to be able to execute and get your idea across flawlessly, especially when you're improvising. Articulation is also another stylistic element that you have in your playing, which helps to accent, the rhythm that you are using, or the feel that you are using in your playing. Being able to articulate or accent certain notes to give them more of a emphasis is very important. How you attack the note, whether it be short or whether it be long, or kind of a you know uh, uh, forzando, where you hit it and you back off of it. These are elements of articulation that can really add stylistic um, emphasis to your solos and your music. One of my favorite tools I've mentioned before is the metronome, but it's great to be able to play with the metronome because that gives you that solid click. But you don't necessarily have to use the metronome all the time. I mean, it could be something a little bit more musical, let's say like a backing track. Typically, backing tracks, if you're using an application, would have backing tracks that are actually in time. um, there are MIDI applications out there that utilize MIDI time, so it's able to keep pretty accurate time. Also, there are apps out there that use real studio musicians when creating backing tracks, and usually those studio musicians, when they're in the studio, there's usually some sort of click track in the ear, at least of the drummer, so that the drummer can keep accurate time for the entire ensemble. So even if you're playing with a backing track, that's a great way to develop time, because you get to hear not only just a steady pulse, but you get to hear the entire rhythmic um, you know context of what you're playing, and that's very important, because ultimately you're going to be playing, in some sort of context of a band, right? So some sort of ensemble, or what have you. So backing tracks are always a great way to develop time. But sometimes when you're at home and you want something steady, if you're practicing scales, and you want to practice, you can utilize just a simple metronome. And I'll say this one thing about metronomes. You know, if you have a metronome, learn how to practice with the metronome, uh, and be able to, you know, interpret certain fields, right? So I can have, let's say, a metronome on that clicks, every beat, click, 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 right? But let's say, I want to be able to, get the swing feel of two and four. So, we, pretty much snap on two and four, right? So instead of click, 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 or one, two, three, four, I may set my metronome at half speed and go, and so that would be my click on my metronome, right? And I would basically superimpose in my mind or fill in the one, but I'm just counting the two and four, two, four, two, three, four. And that's a good way to, build that swing feel to see if you can, stay in time as well while you're practicing. So, in the course, we definitely cover, different times and how to exercise and grow in your timing and feel and really develop that so that you are able to execute in a more I guess professional or more advanced way. And then, of course, listening and reacting, right? So as you continue to grow as a musician, it's going to be all about, listening, right? Listening to music from some of your greats, even some of the folks that you don't listen to, that often. Being able to listen to those individuals and how they execute and how they have developed their timing and their feel uh, can give you ideas of some of the things that you can do in your music, especially when it comes to rhythmic variation, right? And how you articulate, how stylistically some of the things that you may do in your solos, and also as you're working with musicians, especially in a live band setting, you may have a situation where someone may, you know, come up with a rhythm that that is not necessarily a in the context originally of the song or the rhythm that you're playing, but it sounds great, and so the rest of the band follows along, right? So example is that, in band settings, I would play in a swing song, maybe a Latin rhythm or a Latin feel on a particular, solo snippet. And then all of a sudden the drummer hears it or the bass player hears it, and they follow along playing the same chord changes, but switching up the feel to make it Latin. So now the song goes from swing to Latin, so the Latin feel, and basically you go to a whole nother direction, and so that's an example of how listening and in reacting to each other as you're playing in a live band setting can be really fun. If everyone has good timing and good feel. So the outcome, obviously of this module would be, to move beyond correct notes to music that feels natural, confident, and expressive, right? We want to be able to use these tools in our tool belt as we continue to grow and develop as musicians. All right, in step four, we're talking about developing your voice. Uh, Developing your voice is one of those things that it would eventually happen. I've heard people say, you don't want to sound like this player. You don't want to listen to this player so much that you're going to sound like that person. In my opinion, especially if it's someone that you really admire and someone that is great and that has accomplished a lot, I say, try to listen to them as much as you can and try to mimic them as much as you can. Because here's the thing, you're never going to sound exactly like that person. That person is a product of all of the influences and all of the people that they have listened to in their career or lifetime. So even if you listen to that person, that's the only thing you hear, you're never going to sound exactly like that person. You know, even if that's the only music you've ever heard, but because you live in a different time period, you're going to have different personal experiences that's going to affect your life than that original person. There's going to be some difference in your playing. There may be even certain physical characteristics that could prevent you from sounding exactly like someone else. And of course, when somebody says sounds like them or sounds like another person, they may not actually physically mean, you sound like them, like, but there's a lot of variables that go into play when you're talking about being able to sound like someone. But maybe your phrasing, some of the ideas, musical ideas you come up with, maybe an example of what someone said. You sound like someone. But realistically, if you listen to more than just one person, you're going to be a culmination of all of the influences you have around you. It could be people that have come and gone, some of the jazz greats. It could be people that you're surrounded by, maybe your music instructor, your private teacher, other individuals, friends that you perform and play with that could influence your playing and help you to ultimately develop your own voice. But eventually you will develop your own voice. And one of the great ways to do that is by really jumping in and improvising. So, in this module, this step, you really start to dig in to understand how improvisation helps you to develop your own voice, because you will start coming up with ideas on your own, especially as you start experimenting with, harmony, experimenting with lines, experimenting with scales, and you're going to find things that sound good to you. And when you find those things that sound good to you, you're going to repeat them, and then you'll continue. As long as you continue to practice, as long as you continue to develop, you're going to continue to find those things, those sounds that sound great to you, that appeal to you, and then you're going to continue to do them. And as you continue to build upon that foundation, what's going to happen is all of those elements will come into play to help you create your own individual sound. So, things such as phrasing. You're gonna hear other musicians phrase, and you're gonna say to yourself, "Oh man, I really like the way they phrase, or I like the way they put those notes together in a line." And you're gonna make mental note of that, and you're gonna hear other players that may play some of the same thing, and you're gonna like what they do, or it could be something totally different, and you like what they do, and you're gonna assimilate that, their phrasing, how they where they breathe, how long their phrasings are. Those things would appeal to you, and also too, being able to continue your journey and learning your music vocabulary. There's just like in a language, there is vocabulary in music, especially in jazz, right? There's certain things that are done, certain phrases, certain licks, things of that sort that are played in jazz. Whether it comes to turnarounds, or various different elements that have kind of become standard. And there's some that can be made up, right? As you develop your own personality, your own voice, you're going to develop your own vocabulary. But there is vocabulary out there from many players. Not only vocabulary, but dialect, right? So there's so many musicians that play physically some of the same, or orally, I should say, some of the same notes and phrases, but it may sound somewhat different depending on how they play it, whether they adjust articulation, whether they adjust the rhythmic feel of the lick or passage. They they add to the dialect, right? Just like you can have people from up north, northern United States talk different from the people down south. They say the same thing. They may say the same thing and convey the same idea, but it sounds different depending on where they're coming from. But understanding music vocabulary is very important, and a lot of that comes from studying other musicians, right? That's how you kind of help develop your music vocabulary, but also studying music theory, really understanding, harmony and how it works, and what you can do over different chord changes and progressions is very important. But then also listening to other musicians and transcribing what they're playing, whether they're playing melodies or they're improvising solos, really dissect what they're doing, internalize what they're doing. If listen to players, if they play something that you like, that sounds good to your ear, transcribe it. You could do it live, or you can do it, on paper, or in your notation software. But study what they're doing and practice it and try to get it and sound like them. I may have mentioned to you guys before, I am a big Jackie McLean fan. I love Jackie McLean. I have others that I love as well, but Jackie McLean is one of my biggest influences. And so I would spend hours just sitting listening to his music and trying to play some of the stuff that he's played on various songs. And so you should do the same thing, regardless of the genre of music the player is in. If you like that genre of music, use that whatever they play and try to learn it and try to internalize it so that you can use it and put it in your own toolbox or your own tool bag and pull it out whenever you want. It's a great way to accelerate your learning and accelerate the development of your own voice. And as I just mentioned, being able to listen, listen to other musicians and listen and observe the style, not only of their playing, but just in the music in general. As you listen to other musicians and you see what they're doing or hear what they're doing, that will start to become a part of you and your playing, especially if you're transcribing their solos and you're really digging in to understand how what they play works over the harmony, works over the progressions. Another thing too is and this is something that I do because I just like to do it. You know how their albums, back in the day when we used to buy vinyl records that you would play on a record player. Uh, the actual liner notes or notes either on the back of the album or maybe there's some sort of insert inside of the album cover sleeve, which would have notes, and those notes would cover things in regards to maybe the inspiration of the artist and why he wrote the song that was recorded. Maybe some background information on the artist himself. Maybe some information or detail about the studio session and the musicians that were part of the studio session when they recorded the song. All of these things are interesting ideas and interesting facts that can help uh, understand where that artist is coming from, and also maybe even help you to channel some of the personal experiences that you have in your life into the music that you create. I mean, everybody is an artist. When you're talking about jazz improvisation, everybody's an artist because you're creating music on the fly based on the rules of the context you're in, the vocabulary that you've learned. You're writing music on the fly, and every time you play, it could be a brand new composition. So, being able to listen, understand the styles, also understand where the music is coming from the artist that you are listening to really helps to contribute to your own voice. And then also expression and dynamics. That's totally key. Expression and dynamics, especially dynamics, is a great way to set yourself apart because if you can utilize the various elements within music, such as stylistic elements, such as articulation, phrasing, and of course expressions, dynamics, ornaments, things of that sort, really helps to develop a sense of musicality in your playing and gives you more dynamic range, right? In the things that you do when you're playing a ballad, being able to play that ballad with lush tones, slowly, different harmonic ideas, and then maybe even with a nice soft subtone, specifically on the sax. These are elements, and also playing soft and loud, and those various things can be used to really give you some variation in your playing to help develop your internal voice. So developing your voice is something. It's a personal journey, right? It's a personal journey that everybody goes through, and your voice may be shaped from the time you originally start playing the instrument all the way in up until you can't play the instrument anymore. Developing your internal voice is always going to be a product of the things that you go through, the things that you learn, and the amount of time that you continue to practice on your instrument. Also, your voice could change even if you, let's say, you lay off your instrument for a while. It'll be a personal experience where you may have your mind may still remember or have ideas. Maybe you're still listening to the music, but if you haven't practiced in a while, you may get a little rusty, and the ideas that you're thinking can't come out as fluidly as they used to, and therefore you may get frustrated, and that could go into shaping, your new sound if you decide to come back to it and be a little bit more consistent. So all of these things help to develop your sound. So the outcome, obviously, of this section is, to sound like a musician instead of simply reproducing exercises. Be able to speak musically with the vocabulary that you've learned over your journey, right? Be able to utilize those things in your toolbox to be able to create your own sound and your own voice for others to be able to grasp and enjoy as you're making your way to being a wonderful musician. All right, guys. So we're in module 4, and we want to talk about how do we make the most of the time that we have, our practice time. And I'm just suggesting that all you need is about 20 minutes a day, or 20 minutes per practice session. If you can get more time than that during a day or during a session, that's great. But if you are like me and you're just consumed, and find yourself running out of time uh, before the end of the day, then being able to have a more targeted practice routine can be very helpful. So I recommend really just being targeted in your practice time. And to kind of help give you a guide, what I've done is kind of put together a little blueprint that could hopefully help you to be able to be more focused in your practice session. And again, these are things that I think are fundamental to your practice. But if you have other things you want to work on and you do have time, make sure to at least try to get some of these um, items into your practice routine, because they're designed to help build your fundamentals. So starting off, again, to build 20 minutes, I suggest 3 to 5 minutes of breathing and air support. So if you do have that time, I would focus on exercises. Focus on correct posture when you're approaching playing, whether you're standing up or whether you're sitting. Make sure you stand up. I'm gonna sit straight with your back straight, and your neck supported and straight, and focus on breathing. You can focus on just taking some deep breaths using your diaphragm muscles, and not lifting your shoulders up and down, but really making use of getting that extra capacity by using your diaphragm. So you're exercising your diaphragm and getting it conditioned to be able to help you get that capacity of air, in as you intake, and then when you exhale, using your diaphragm to push the air out. So I would kind of work on that, kind of get you in the habit of doing that versus, you know, taking your shoulders up and thinking that's helping, and it's not giving you that capacity that you need as far as what you could be getting when if you use your diaphragm. And plus it doesn't look as cool if you're you know putting your shoulders up. If you're using your diaphragm, inhaling, using your diaphragm to expand your chest cavity, lung cavity, that gives you the maximum intake. And then, of course, using your diaphragm to push the air out gives you, you know, the ability to, push the air out more consistently. So I would suggest 3 to 5 minutes if you have that time. More than that, that's great, but at least 3 to 5 minutes could help you be able to develop the breathing and air supports you need. Kind of going along with that, one thing that kind of helps your lung capacity is working on long tones. Uh, Long tones definitely help with your breathing, especially if you focus on utilizing um, your diaphragm and, you know, taking air in through your mouth and, breathing out, through your mouth. Maybe you want to breathe out with your lips closed, so it could be something like this. So you're breathing in, and your stomach should go out when you breathe in, and then when you breathe out, maybe with your lips closed. So this is a good exercise. I should have shown you that when we're actually talking about the breathing and air support. But that good exercise is breathe in through your mouth as quick as you can, and your stomach should poke out, and then just practice breathing out. So this helps to exercise those muscles, in your stomach to breathe in and then give you that controlled push out like you're playing through your horn. So going back to long tones, so doing this exercise on your instrument, playing a particular note, that's an example of a long tone. So obviously you're looking for being able to supply proper breath support to the production of the note on your instrument, but also you're looking to develop your tone, right? So the more you are focused on, correct breath support, being able to contain and play the note in tune, also listening to the sound of the note, right? Making sure that it's consistent, it's not cracking, it's not wavering, and it's a solid tone. As you continue to work on long tones, you're going to develop that solid sound on your instrument, and that really comes into play when you're playing songs with an ensemble. Also, when you're choosing to be expressive, being able to have that consistency in your sound, gives you the ability to control the note, right? So if there are things that you want to do, being able to play the note correctly, sustained correctly, and in tune, gives you that extra control if you want to do any type of embellishments to the note, utilizing your embouchure and really being able to be expressive on that note. And just like I mentioned, your embouchure is very important when playing long tones, making sure your embouchure is consistent. As we discussed before, making sure you do not have too much of the mouthpiece inside of your mouth, and make sure you have enough inside of your mouth. So if you have too much inside your mouth, the reed may vibrate, a little bit more uncontrollably and kind of get more of a honking sound. But if you have too little of the mouthpiece in your mouth, you may restrict the reed from vibrating as much as it should be, and you could get a real thin and quiet sound. You want to kind of have that sweet spot in the middle, and the best way to do that is just to experiment with what sounds natural when you position the mouthpiece within your mouth. And so if you can do long tones for about 5 minutes, that should give you a good base to build on every practice session and really start to develop the tone in your playing. All right, so major scales, or as you continue to grow and once you learn your major scales, it could be minor scales, it could be dominant scales, augmented scales, diminished scales, what have you. Uh, Practicing 4 minutes on scales is could be really key to developing control and fluency in your playing. And I recommend anytime you play scales, I recommend utilizing the metronome when you play scales, because that helps you to develop good time. Once you uh, get to the point where you kind of have a really good sense of time, maybe you can start practicing and maintaining that in your head. But I would suggest, if you have not been practicing with a tuner, I'm sorry, a metronome, you definitely want to practice your scales with the metronome. So you can start off with your major scales, maybe at 60 beats a minute. using that to maintain proper tone, a good solid tone, and then just move up each note in the scale, go up and down. If you want to go multiple octaves, you can too, and then gradually speed it up. Maybe every time you play it correctly with no mistakes, then maybe you go up 10 beats per minute and play that correctly, and maybe you go up 10 beats per minute, or you can do in 5 beat per minute increments if you'd like. But the main goal is to, whatever you do, maintain control, because as you grow as a musician, you're going to find that a lot of your execution, if you're very disciplined in practicing with the metronome, your execution is going to be very, very tight, meaning that you're going to be able to execute fast passages uh, very clearly in time with very little sloppiness, right? So that's what we're trying to avoid by practicing our scales with metronome. So practice your scales. Start off with your major scales. When you have all of those down, I would go to minor scales. Practice your minor scales, I mean your melodic minor scale or your harmonic minor scales. Be able to play those up and down, and then you can move into to other scales as well if you like. But the main goal is to practice with a metronome. Um, this kind of brings us to the next practice routine you can do is working on rhythm, timing, and the metronome. Just like I mentioned before, when you're practicing, if you practice with the metronome, that helps you to develop that time. Uh, so once you decide, what you want to practice with the metronome or a backing track that is in time. Like if you want to go with some sort of application that allows you to play backing tracks, you can utilize that to maintain time and work on rhythm. So I would recommend, again, practicing with a metronome, with backing tracks, and experimenting with rhythm. If you don't know what to come up with on your own, I would suggest maybe getting some, jazz etude books. If you just do a search online for jazz etude books, especially those that come with play along recordings, you can utilize those to read the music on the page. And typically, a lot of those come with backing tracks, and that should help you to be able to play, in time, also play in tune. So I would certainly recommend uh, being able to play either with a metronome or a backing track, jazz etudes, if you can find those, which I know you can because there are plenty out there. All right, the next thing is maybe practicing a few minutes on playing a melody. It could be any melody. It could be Mary Had a Little Lamb, or London Bridge is Falling Down. But just take a melody, any melody from maybe your favorite song, see if you can play it by ear once correctly, and then take it up different keys, right? You may want to you take it up a half step, or take it down a half step, take it up a major third, take it up a major second, but just practice playing in tune, playing your melody um, in different keys, because that will help you to develop your ear. And obviously, we know in jazz, your ear is very important to be able to uh, you know, if you need to change your melody, or uh, you know, play a song in a different key, then that's a great way to build your ear in order to be able to accommodate in various situations in music. So definitely practice playing melodies. I would say maybe simple melodies at first in different keys, to help to develop your ear, and also the connection with your fingers to be able to execute in the different keys. And then, finally, as something that you can do in your practice time, a couple minutes, is record and evaluate yourself, right? You want to be able to evaluate your performance. And then this is something that I've been harping on, I think, since the beginning of this course, is make sure that you measure yourself and your progress. Because if you do that, what you'll find is you're actually able to see how you have progressed over a period of time. And if you're ever in doubt that maybe something is not working or you're not getting better or maybe you're not getting it, if you look over your notes and some of the things that you've recorded, you'll find that you have indeed been improving. And so that's definitely something that we want to do, an activity that we need to do in order to gauge our progress and be able to look back and say that we have improved over a period of time. So the key message, I kind of want to get across to you guys is consistency is more valuable than marathon practice sessions, right? If you're consistent in your practice, meaning you go into your practice with an agenda and a target, then that goes a long way to helping you make the most of your practice time. Not everybody has 2 hours a day to practice. Some people they practice 3, 4, 8 hours a day. Charlie Parker, when he was, getting his things together on his instrument, he was practicing 16 hours a day. For those of us that don't have that kind of time, if you have 30 minutes a day, use that time wisely. Go in with a plan, and then execute on that plan. Try not to deviate. If there's something you want to practice, then make sure that it is in your plan to practice. If you want to make up changes, if you think of something that you wanted to play, and it can't wait to the next practice session, then you can play it then. But depending on the time you have, you may have to substitute something in your practice. But the goal is to go into your session with a practice agenda and then execute that agenda. Don't stray away from it. There's always going to be other times you can get other things in, but the foundation and the fundamentals are very important. So again, I just wanted to kind of give you an example of how you can structure your practice time, the things that you can do to keep your practice time focused and allow you to be able to accomplish things in each practice session. All right, so module 5, I just wanted to take some time to address some of the frequently asked questions um, that I get when discussing this masterclass in order to be able to get better, the blueprint. And I just going to kind of run through them and talk about each one of them. So one of the things that I hear is, I don't have enough time. Well, you know, you have to decide for yourself, what are the things that you want to do, right? We tend to make time for the things that we want to accomplish, in our lives. So, if music is something that you want to do, you'll figure out how to rearrange some things, get some items done, or shorten some time that we spend on other things. If you're spending time watching a lot of TV, then if you really want to increase your musicianship, you may have to cut down on some of the programs that you watch, or if you can only practice a certain amount of time during the day, meaning you don't want to keep everybody up at night, you don't have an isolation room to where you can practice at any point during the day, even late at night. You may have to practice when people are up 30 minutes and then watch your shows in the evening, maybe with some headphones or maybe on your phone or whatever. But you have to figure that out for yourself. That's not something that somebody can do for you. You have to be able to find the time that you need in order to be able to accomplish your goals. And that's just something that you're going to have to figure out for yourself, and nobody else can figure that out for you. So I challenge you to be able to look at your schedule, find the time you need. If you need to wake up, 30 minutes earlier every day to get that time in, then do it. If you need to, create a way that you can practice late at night, um, maybe if you have, the funds to build you an isolation booth where you can practice really late, then I encourage you to do it. But you have to find that time. Another excuse, I'll call them excuse excuses. We'll call them what they are. I'm too old to improve. I think I told you guys about the time I met James Moody. Was a world famous saxophone player, played with Dizzy Gillespie and Sonny Rollins, and just a ton of famous jazz musicians. When I met him in '07 at J.B. Abersold camp, he was, constantly talking about how he practices every day, how he, tries to learn new things. And he was at that time in 2007, he was 82 years old and he was still practicing heavy. So, that should go to tell you that, age is not a thing. If you are capable physically and mentally, you're never too old to improve yourself or learn new things. I mean, it's just about getting in there and getting it done. Another excuse that I've heard is, I've been playing for years, but I still feel stuck, right? Well, one of the reasons why you do is because you're probably not uh, going into your practice session with an agenda, and you're probably not recording and evaluating yourself. If you want to ensure improvement, you have to go into your practice session working on things that's giving you trouble, and then evaluate yourself, after each session. It is very important to do that in order to get from, where you are into a place where you're starting to feel accomplished. Because if you don't, then you're going to feel like you're in a rut, and that you're not improving because you're not working on new things. You're just working on those things that make you feel good, that you're comfortable with. Another excuse is, I don't understand music theory. Well, just with anything you don't understand, you have to learn, right? And you start from the basics. Learn the basics. Study. That when you were in school and you didn't understand trigonometry, you studied, and as you studied, then in practice, then you were able to understand it enough to at least pass your test. And then some people go on and learn in order to be able to do their job, if their job function requires trigonometry. Just take it to whatever your day job is, whatever skill that you have, you had to start somewhere, and then you learned. If music is important to you, for you to be able to grow, then you will tackle your insecurities and just study, right? So music is not something that's just going to pop in your head. Music theory, that is. You have to put the work in and you have to study. So that's what I challenge you to do. Just really dig in, study, start from the basics, and then work your way up. And in uh, this classroom, this school, we do target basics of music theory, and we take you up into more advanced concepts of music theory. So don't worry, we have all the tools you need here. Another excuse is, I don't know where to begin. Well, we're going to shoot that one down because I tell you, exactly where to begin. Right. So give you a, a basic formula on how you get, where you need to be when you in terms of being able to play jazz. Right. We start off with foundation elements, and then from those foundation elements, we move up into more complex topics. And that's the simple part of it. You have to start somewhere, build those foundations, and then build on top of the foundations. Just like when you're building a house, you build the foundation of the house first, and then everything else. You build the first floor, which provides you, a basic level of accommodation, and then you can build the second floor, third floor, or however many floors that you want to build. To give you the additional level of accommodation. Same thing with music. You start with your foundation elements, and then you build upon top of that as you continue to grow as a musician. So there's no excuse for not knowing where to begin. You just start from the foundation. And so, like I mentioned here on the slide, every great musician started with the fundamentals. Charlie Parker, John Coltrane, Phil Woods, all these guys started with fundamentals. And just as they did, you need to as well. All right, guys, so we're at the last module. This is the place where we're talking about continuing your journey, right? So keep in mind, today wasn't about teaching you everything, right? This was just giving you the roadmap that you need to follow in order to get you from where you are to where you want to be. You guys, currently, if you have not subscribed, you're in the free section of the site of the school. I provide tools here for you, but they're limited. If you want to get the most of the school and the lessons available, you want to go to the premium membership. The premium membership is very affordable. I think I currently have it set at the time of this recording at $49 a month, which gives you access to a lot of tools that you can use to grow. But that's where I break down each of these steps even further, and we go into great detail about how to accomplish each one of these steps. So, that's what you want to do. You definitely take everything in this masterclass that I just showed you, and you could do your own research and try to improve on your own. Or if you want to get more in-depth learning, you subscribe to Premium, and what you'll get is a complete step-by-step curriculum. You'll get structured learning path, which is great, because a lot of people need structure, such as myself. I'll give you backing tracks. You'll get direct instructor access, meaning you'll get access to me, and as a part of the premium membership, if you become a premium member, I will give you a one-on-one session with myself for about 30 minutes where we can actually go over your goals and create a structured plan specifically for you. You get access to our weekly live jazz master classes, which is great to be able to connect with other musicians and hear about some of the things that they're working on and what they're doing. I will have downloadable exercises and practice plans. Those are great to be able to help you document your journey and give you some guidance on what you're going to be accomplishing as you practice. Also, community discussions. There will be discussions that are specific to those in the community, especially in the premium membership. So that is an advantage that you have. Also, you get access to new lessons, which are going to be added, pretty regularly. So I'm always working on adding new things to the school, and this is kind of the ground floor, because you'll be able to see new things as they come out, before those in the free membership may be able to see them, right? Because some things I only release in the free membership until I have something else to replace it, maybe something new and better. So just again, the premium membership, which is the next level up from free, gives you the ability to get some additional resources. But this class is available with all the modules in the premium membership. So if you feel like if you need more guidance, more instruction, I would encourage you to go ahead and upgrade to the premium membership. All right, just for attending this masterclass today, I do have some free gifts for you. So I'm not going to leave you empty-handed. I do want to give you these items, these downloadables from the Saxophone Success Blueprint to kind of help you, along your way. Again, if you feel like you need, more in-depth instruction, I would encourage you to go ahead and upgrade to the premium membership, where you can get more detailed information. But what you're going to get, as a free download just from attending this masterclass, is a six-phase roadmap to help you on your journey. I'll give you a daily practice blueprint to kind of help guide your practice session so that you can get the most out of each minute that you're practicing. Also, you get a weekly practice planner, right? That's one of the things that we want to be able to do, is to be able to plan our practice sessions accordingly. Also, a goal tracker, right? You need to know where you're going, in order to be able to plan and prepare to get there, right? So, being able to document and track your goals is very important. So this goal tracker helps you to do that. A practice checklist, right? This helps you identify the things that you want to practice and add those to your practice planner and your practice blueprint. So being able to identify those things that you want to practice, check them off in your practice session is very important. So this helps you do that. And then next steps guide, right? So also being able to plan what you're going to focus in on your next practice session. So being able to look at next steps is great. So these are free downloads that you can add to your library and use to help focus your practice sessions and give you that transformation from where you are to where you like to be as a accomplished musician. All right, guys, so that's it. You are equipped with what you need to get started. I just want to leave you with this quote. Talent may get someone started, but consistent practice guided by a proven system is what creates confident musicians. Remember, your next breakthrough starts with taking the next right step. Again, this is Latron L. Train Brantley at L Train Jazz Studios. I welcome you and I look to see your progress soon. Let's get to practicing.